Hello all and welcome to the part 3 of the GMAT Advanced Target 700 program by Career Kata. In this video, we will be looking at the third part of the Verbal Advanced series. This is in continuation to the last video where we discussed a scientific passage which was discussing topics like evolution. If you are new to this video, I would suggest that you quickly run through the last video so that you get a quick hang of the passage. We will quickly revise what was the passage that we were discussing. So we were looking at the microwear patterns found on the teeth of a particular type of primate, and we had three different assumptions by three different researchers. We had Walker, who was kind of dismissing Jolly's hypothesis that Australopithecines ate hard seeds. He also disputed Szale's suggestion that these primates were primarily looking at bone crunching. His own conclusion was that Australopithecines were frugivores, which means fruit eaters. In the last passage, we saw that the whole methodology was questioned, and the last passage suggested that there is enormous variation which causes distinct microwear patterns. Even in a particular species of animals, for example, baboons, you can see one group which would be eating soft-bodied insects will have very, very different microwear patterns as compared to those that eat hard-bodied insects. Similarly, the whole thing also depends on what geography is it that these primates are a part of. And also there can be considerable variation that is a result of different other factors that might be at play. All right. If you want a detailed discussion, as I just mentioned, you can go back to the last video where we have done a detailed discussion of this particular passage. So let's quickly jump into the additional questions that are there as part of this passage. Let's look at the fourth question. It says the passage suggests which of the following about the microwear patterns found on the teeth of omnivorous primates. Okay, so what are omnivorous primates? Omnivorous primates are essentially primates that eat both carnivorous as well as herbivorous sources of nutrition, right? Let's look into the passage. The patterns provide information about what kinds of foods are not eaten by the particular species of primate, but not about the foods actually eaten. Okay, so the option first says that the patterns provide information about what kinds of foods are not eaten by the particular species of primate, but not about the foods actually eaten. Okay, now of course there is not a lot of discussion about what are the foods that are not eaten by the particular species of the primate, but let's assume that even the little information that is there about what they are not eating is enough, but not about the foods actually eaten. Now there are different hypotheses about the foods that are actually eaten, and they have been presented by all the three researchers, namely whether they were eating fruits, whether they were eating bones, or whether they were eating something else. So we'll keep again this option as one of the options that we will probably consider later on, and let's move on to the other options. The second option says that the patterns of various primate species living in the same environment resemble one another. Now this is something which is clearly not a part of the passage. As we've just seen, the third passage says that even if you have the same species and in the same environment, for example, if you are eating hard-bodied insects versus soft-bodied, the passage clearly states that the microwear patterns are going to be very, very different for both of these. Hence, using that particular information, we can very, very easily knock off option B. Let's look at option C. It says the patterns may not provide information about the extent to which a particular species diet includes seeds. Okay. See, if somebody is eating seeds, there is a chance that the patterns will be able to provide us with a decent amount of information. Nobody is doubting the fact that microwear patterns cannot tell you, that a particular primate ate seeds. The only difference is that you cannot distinguish based on microwear patterns alone that a particular primate includes, the diet included seeds in that particular primate's diet. All right. So it is a kind of like a condition which is not exhaustive, but nevertheless, there is credence to the fact that microwear patterns can actually help you in figuring out which primate ate seeds. Okay. So it's a slightly tougher option to rule out than option B, but I think we can rule out option C as well. Okay. Let's move on and look at the other options. Now, option D is stating that the patterns provide more information about these primates' diets than do the tooth microwear patterns of primates who are frugivores. Okay. So now let's come back to the passage. Okay. We should, I think, now at least have another read of the second and third paragraph. All right. Now, let's look at the third line of the third paragraph, right? Tooth microwear characteristics of East African specimens are indistinguishable from those of chimpanzees and orangutans, which are commonly assumed to be frugivorous primates. Okay. In the last passage, we can see that insect eating can also cause distinct microwear patterns. All right. So primates who are also eating fruits as well as insects can easily be kind of classified into the omnivore category, which has been mentioned. If we proceed forward, it says that in addition, the diets of current omnivore primates vary considerably. Okay, so the main theme of the passage is that even in terms of diets, omnivorous primates also has show a high degree of variation, right? If Australopithecines were omnivores too, we might expect to find considerable population variation in their tooth microwear patterns. All right. Let's come back to the question. The option D, now in the light of the information that we have just read, the patterns provide more information about these primate diets than do the tooth microwear patterns of primates who are frugivores. Nowhere in the passage is it saying that, the microwear characteristics are truer for primates than for omnivores versus frugivores. Okay, so of course there is homogenization where it says that if it does not apply to the frugivores, or if they were omnivores, there is considerable variation, but the argument is limited only to this variation, okay, and not to the utility of microwear patterns. All right, hence we can also knock out option D. Now let's look at option E. The patterns may differ among groups within a species depending on the environment within which a particular group lives. Now this is something which is very, very easily decipherable. We have just seen that, the passage mentions that the patterns may differ among groups, even if they are in the same environment. Conditions which are very specific to the group might cause very, very specific patterns to occur. All right. So we had option A as well as option E, but as we can see, option E is a much better fit as compared to what the passage suggests. Hence, we will go ahead with option E. Let's look at the next question. It says it can be inferred from the passage that if studies of tooth microwear patterns were conducted on modern baboons, which of the following would most likely be true of the results obtained? Okay, again, we have seen in the passage, if you conduct it on modern primates, especially if they are omnivorous, you will see a considerable degree of variation. Let's start with option A. There would be enough aberration to allow the determination of whether baboons are frugivorous or insectivorous. Okay, now this is clearly not, this can be very easily knocked off from the information that is there in the passage. Even insectivorous baboons, if they eat hard-bodied insects versus soft-bodied insects, there would be variation within that particular group as well, right? So even if it is insectivorous, soft-bodied insectivorous might look the same as a soft fruit eating. baboon. All right. So you cannot really comment that, you know, whether being frugivorous or insectivorous is going to cause much of a difference here. Let's look at the next option. The results would suggest that insects constitute the largest part of the baboon's diet. Okay. Now, if it is saying that it is conducted on modern baboons, would it suggest that insects constitute the largest part of the baboon's diet? If we did microvare patterns, no, because there will be so much variability that you will not be able to figure out this particular part of the statement, right? This option is also very easy to knock off. Let's look at the next option. The results would reveal that there are no significant differences in tooth microvare patterns from one regional baboon population to another. Now, this is in clear contravention to what the passage is saying. The passage is actually saying that there will be you know, a lot of differences in tooth microvare patterns from one region to another region. Okay, let's look at option D. The results would provide an accurate indication of the absence of some kinds of insects from the baboon's diet. Okay, now let's look at this option very, very closely. It says that the results would provide an accurate indication of the absence, okay, not the presence, the absence of some kinds of insects from the baboon's diet. Which will be these insects? Okay, so we have very clearly seen. Again, let's go back to the hard-bodied and the soft-bodied ones. We know for sure that whenever you study microvare patterns, you would be able to see what is the thickness of the enamel that is there. Suppose this is the teeth, you would be able to see what is the thickness of the enamel. Okay, so let us say you see this thickness. Then you see another teeth where the thickness of the enamel is much more. Okay, so what can you comment on somebody who has a larger thickness of the enamel? We can say that those baboons were primarily eating hard-bodied insects. Okay, what can we say about these guys? We can say that they were probably eating soft-bodied insects. Okay, so as I said, you have to focus on the word absence. Because of this kind of enamel, I can probably say that there was an absence in the diet of these kind of microvare pattern having baboons, and the absence was that of hard-bodied insects. Because if they were going to eat hard-bodied insects, their enamel would have adapted to become something looking like this, right? Hence, option D is a very, very close option. Let's look at option E before we can, you know, finalize on D. The results would be unlikely to provide any indication of what inferences about the Australopithecine diet can or cannot be drawn from microvare studies. Okay, so nowhere does it say that, you know, the results would be unlikely to provide any indication. Okay, let me show you the passage again. It just says that Walker's description of possible Australopithecine diets may need to be expanded to include a much more diverse diet. Okay, so nobody is saying that you know, the whole methodology doesn't work. It just says that probably Walker, when he is using this methodology, has to look at a much wider subset of diets and then ascribe his philosophy onto a particular group of primates. All right, so we can also knock off this option, and option D becomes our right answer. Let's look at the next question. It can be inferred from the passage that Walker's conclusion about the Australopithecine diet would be called into question under which of the following circumstances. Okay, now before we proceed on this question, let's quickly remember what was Walker's conclusion. Okay, so Walker said that there is heavy enamel on the Australopithecine teeth, which is a fact. Okay, and he concluded saying that Australopithecines were frugivores. Okay, and what did he base it on? He also based it on the fact that chimpanzees and orangutans of East Africa were also frugivores. Hence, Australopithecines would also be frugivores because both of their microvare characteristics are the same. Okay. So now let's come to the first option. The tooth enamel of Australopithecines is found to be much heavier than that of modern frugivorous primates. So there is no information, or there is not enough information to comment on this particular fact. Okay, so we know that it was heavy, but we do not know whether it was heavier than modern frugivorous primates or not. Okay, the microwear patterns of Australopithecine teeth from regions other than East Africa are analyzed. See, you can analyze specimens from any part of the world. It does not mean that, you know, automatically Walker's conclusion about the Australopithecine diet would be called into question. All right, so we have to be very careful in choosing our option in these kind of questions, because you will see a lot of options. They kind of look very, very similar, and they also work on one particular theme, but that theme might not necessarily be right. Okay, so let's look at option C. Okay, now option C says orangutans are found to have a much broader diet than is currently recognized. Okay, so let's, for the time being, focus ourselves on this particular option. It says orangutans are found to have a much broader diet than is currently recognized. What does this mean? If orangutans, for example, were not only eating fruit, they were also eating insects, or they were also eating something which was very, very hard. Probably they were crunching bones. Okay, they were probably eating other animals who had very, very strong bones, and they were crunching those bones. What would it do? Let's come back. Okay, what is the primary observation on which Walker's conclusion rests? Walker's conclusion rests on the fact that tooth microwear characteristics of East African Australopithecine specimens are indistinguishable from those of chimpanzees and orangutans, which are commonly assumed to be frugivores. Okay, so what is Walker's suggestion? Walker is saying that because chimpanzees were frugivorous, hence Australopithecine is also frugivorous, because both of them have similar instances of microwear characteristics. Now, if I look here and we figure out that orangutans have been eating probably bones, then we cannot say that Australopithecines also ate fruits. Okay, because what is Walker's conclusion about Australopithecines? Okay, Walker's conclusion about the Australopithecines is that they ate fruits. They were frugivorous. And why? Because there is an analogy with chimpanzees. Okay, but if chimpanzees itself is eating, or you know, these guys, if they are eating bones, then we cannot say that they are frugivorous, because you know, then they can also be eating bones, right? Hence option C is a very good choice for the answer. Let's look at the other options as well. Option D says the environment of East Africa at the time Australopithecines lived there is found to have been far more varied than is currently thought. The environment can keep changing. There is no information that suggests that with environment changing, you know, the species like orangutans or chimpanzees would also start changing and will start eating something else. It might be a very, very far-fetched assumption, but not enough information in the passage is there for us to work on this particular assumption. Let's look at the last option. The area in which the Australopithecine specimens were found is discovered to have been very rich in soft-bodied insects during the period when Australopithecines lived there. See, even if they were soft-bodied insects, it has got nothing to do with Walker's conclusion, because Walker's conclusion very clearly is that they are frugivorous. Walker is not primarily talking about insects. Hence, we also don't have to worry about an option that talks about insects. Hence, we are only left with C, which is the right answer. Let's look at the next question. This question says that the author of the passage mentions the diets of baboons and other living primates, most likely in order to. Okay. Now, even before you read this option, so why does he mention the diets of baboons and other living primates? Because he's trying to draw an analogy. You know, he's trying to draw an analogy between microwear patterns of one species versus another species. So he's kind of trying to create an equivalence of sorts. Okay, let's look at the options. Provide evidence that refutes Walker's conclusions about the foods making up the diets of Australopithecines. See, let's come to what Walker had suggested any which ways. Okay. Okay. So Walker suggested that these guys were frugivores. What is the author trying to say? The author is trying to say that the Walker's description of possible diets needs to be much wider. Okay. Because there are significant variations. That is what the author is saying, because it is part of the last passage, which is basically the author's opinion that is coming into play. Okay, so provide evidence that refutes Walker's conclusions. The author is nowhere refuting Walker's conclusions. All right, he is just saying that Walker needs to expand his set. He needs to expand his observation set. That does not mean he's saying that Walker is wrong. He just says that Walker needs to expand a set that is representative of a much more diverse diet. All right. Hence, A is definitely not the answer. Okay, let's look at option B. Suggests that studies of tooth microwear patterns are primarily useful for determining the diets of living primates. Now, the passage, or the author of the passage is mentioning diets of baboons and other living primates primarily to show, as we saw that when you are doing the equivalence of sorts, you also have to look at the variation in terms of diets of modern versus old species. Even if you are looking at two modern species, you should look at geography 1 versus geography 2. So for example, if there is a species like baboons, it could have existed in the past, or there could be a modern species. Similarly, the same species of baboons might have existed in one geography. Similarly, they might have existed in second geography. Similarly, these same baboons of the modern kind might have existed in geography 1. They might have existed in geography 2. Similarly, we can make different combinations, one that ate hard seeds, one that ate soft seeds, one that ate hard seeds, soft seeds, hard seeds, soft seeds. Okay, so are you seeing what is, you can probably build a whole tree of all of these, options. Okay, so you have this whole big tree of options that you can probably build up. Okay, so the author is basically mentioning this fact to show you that this is the whole set of possibilities. In no way he is trying to suggest that the studies of tooth microwear patterns are primarily useful. Okay, so option B also goes out. Let's look at option C. Suggests that Australopithecines were probably omnivorous rather than frugivorous. Maybe, because he's saying that you have to kind of bring in more diet, and you have to look at more species. Okay, so he might be kind of hinting that they were probably omnivorous, has a much more diverse diet, and we are not very, very sure. So we will again, just like we do, park option C. Okay, let's look at option D. Illustrate some of the limitations of using tooth microvare patterns to draw definitive conclusions about a group's diet. Now, this is an absolute gem of an option. See, that is why I suggest that you don't get fixated on one particular option before you have gone through all options. Because see, when you look at option D is hitting the subject at its head. Okay, the last passage, all the last passage is trying to say is that just by looking at microvare patterns, you cannot draw definitive conclusions, which means you can draw some conclusions, but they will not be definite conclusions. Why? Because a group's diet might have so many variations. Okay, so he's just illustrating some of the limitations. As I said, option C might also be hinting at a slightly derived version of what option D is trying to say. But option D is such a better fit that I can now very easily knock off option C. And let's just quickly look at option C. Suggests that tooth microvare patterns are caused by persistent as opposed to occasional consumption of particular foods. Now, this is very easy to knock off. Okay, there is no discussion of persistent versus occasional. Okay, nowhere in the passage is it mentioned that if you eat something persistently, your characteristics are something, and if you eat something occasionally, your characteristics are something else. Okay, so this is not there in passage. No information. Okay, so see, the primary purpose of discussing these questions was to kind of demonstrate how sometimes these passages can be a bit complex, both in terms of their content as well as we have seen in this particular video. But they can also be confusing because of options being placed very, very close to one another and options not being unidimensional. What I mean by unidimensional is that all the options, they do not talk about the same theme. Some of them are talking about completely different dimensions. Okay, so this particular option E, is talking about occasional versus persistent. Okay, option D is looking at limitations, which of course was the right answer. Okay, now this thing is talking about what they ate. Okay, whether they were frugivorous versus omnivorous. Okay, so this is kind of like, if we call it one dimension, this is the second dimension. Okay, suggests that studies are primarily useful for determining the diets of living primates. Now, this has taken the discussion between living and old species, living versus, we can call them old or probably extinct. Okay, so this is kind of like the third dimension. Okay, provide evidence that refutes Walker's conclusions about the foods that make up the diets of Australopithecus. This is kind of like another tangential option, but you can clearly see that there are three dimensions. Okay, persistent versus occasional, omnivorous versus frugivorous, okay, and living versus old and extinct species. So there were three dimensions on which three different options were trying to draw you to. Okay, and this can kind of make you a bit confused about what options to go for. But how do you have to approach these questions? Try to look for options that is, those are which are most holistic in their coverage of the topic. Okay, so why is the author of the passage mentioning the diets of baboons and other living primates? He's trying to primarily bring out the fact that there are some limitations. Okay, limitations being the keyword. Okay, so try to understand the theme of the passage, and I hope that will help you in identifying the right answer choice in most of the questions. So that brings us to the end of this particular video as well as this particular passage. I'll meet you in the next video, where we will again continue forward on our journey to scoring a 700 plus in the GMAT. Till then, keep preparing and have a good day.